Hello, good evening, everyone, all of you divine souls. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Shri Guruve Namah Om Ram Shri Kanhaiya Lal Sharmaye Namah. So let us start with our holy Bhagavad Gita. Today is the first satsang. We will start with chapter 2.2. But before that, let us pray to Lord Krishna. Pray to Lord Shri Krishna. Bhaje vrajek mandanam samast pap khandanam swabhakta chitta ranjanam sadaiv nandanandanam supacha gucha mastakam sunad venu hastakam anant sagar sagaram Namami Krishna Nagaram, Namami Krishna Nagaram, Namami Krishna Nagaram. So let us start with welcome all of you divine souls. You know, we are all in essence the same consciousness. You know, I pray to Lord Shri Krishna, who is the Jagat Guru, the Guru of this entire creation, to bless us, all of us who are, present in this satsang. And we are praying to Lord Shri Krishna to bless all of you with divine wisdom. So today we will be starting our journey of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, shloka number 2. Lord Shri Krishna explains the Sankhya Yoga in this chapter. Sankhya Yoga is the mantra for success in all areas of your life. Do you know that the first thing that you require to transform yourself and your life, what is that? It is becoming uncomfortable with your current state. Until and unless you become uncomfortable with your current state of life, you will never be able to transform. The moment you start becoming uncomfortable with your pains, with your sufferings, then you start opening up a doorway to move up to the best versions of your life. Most people, they do not choose to design an extraordinary life for themselves. Because, why? Because they have grown comfortable with the pain and sufferings of the current life. And the first prerequisite to improve your life, to create a new destiny for yourself, is to become aware of whether your present circumstances, they are leading you upwards or they are leading you downwards in life. So the first words that Lord Shri Krishna spoke in Bhagavad Gita, they start from here. Till now we were listening to Arjun. It was Arjun Vishad. It was all Arjun was, saying everything, whatever he was feeling, the dejection, the delusion. But now, from this shloka, is the first word that Lord Shri Krishna is speaking. So it starts with, let me share what the shloka is. Shri Bhagwan says, Shri Bhagwan Vacha Kutastva Kashmal Nidam Vishame Samopasthitam Anarye Jushtam Aswargam Akirti Karam Arjun. So, Lord Shri Krishna, he's telling Arjun that, oh Arjun, in such a critical moment, they are in the midst of a battlefield. Now, in such a critical moment, how has this delusion overcome you? This despondency, we can say, that is not befitting an honorable person. He calls it an Aryan. Aryan, he means an honorable person. So this does not befit an honorable person. It is very disgraceful. It is very detrimental to the attainment of heaven. Then somebody with this thought process cannot attain heaven. Now, the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, is Sankhya Yoga. Lord Shri Krishna, he condenses the teaching of entire Gita in this chapter. And this chapter is the essence of the entire Gita. There are 4 main topics of Sankhya Yoga that are covered in this chapter 2. First is the power of surrender. Arjun, now after this chapter, completely surrenders himself to Lord Shri Krishna and accepts Bhagwan Shri Krishna as his Guru. He requests Lord Shri Krishna to guide him on how to tide over his sorrow. The second thing in this chapter is the ignorance of the true nature of ourself. This is the cause of all pain and suffering in our life. Maharishi Patanjali calls it avidya. He says, avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesha, klesha. These are the 5 kleshas. And avidya means ignorance about our true nature is the root cause of all the pains and sufferings in our life. And thirdly, what we learn in this chapter is the essence of karma yoga, the discipline of selfless action without being attached to the fruits of it. This is the essence of karma yoga that we learn in chapter 2. And the fourth important thing we learn in chapter 2 is the description of a perfect man. What should be a perfect man look like? That's why he says is Aryan, a person whose mind is steady and single-pointed, one-pointed, focused. That is the perfect man. So today we shall be going, very, very deep into the aspect of our own delusion. So stay with us till the end. So this is, I can guarantee you that if you are able to just follow this entire series of Bhagavad Gita, your life would never be the same again. So chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita starts with, that Sanjay was continuing to explain to Dhritarashtra, that what is happening in the Kurukshetra field, the battlefield. So Sanjay was telling Lord Dhritarashtra that Arjun has put down his Gandhi bow and he is sitting on his chariot. This chariot was called Kapidhwaja. Arjun's chariot was called Kapidhwaja. Why it was called Kapidhwaja? Because it had the flag on which Hanumanji was depicted on that flag. So Kapi, Lord Hanuman. So Arjun is saying now, I shall not fight, because he has seen all his relatives, his kith and kins, his brothers, his guru, and his Bhishma Pitama, who is very fond of him. So, and he was thinking, how should I fight with them? So Sanjay is explaining to this Rashtra that seeing Arjun, full of compassion, His mind is depressed. Arjun is very depressed now. His eyes are full of tears. So now Sanjay says, Madhusudan spoke the following words. Now Sanjay is addressing Lord Shri Krishna as Madhusudan. This is very important. Madhusudan. Madhusudan means the killer of the demon Madhu. Madhu was a death. So, but it was Lord Vishnu who killed the demon Madhu, not Lord Shri Krishna in his current avatar. But you know, Sanjay is a very virtuous man. And with his divine vision, he knew that Lord Shri Krishna was not an ordinary man, but he is the supreme God himself. Yeah, that's why Lord Shri Krishna is always addressed as Bhagwan, Shri Bhagwan. That is why the opening sentence of this shloka is Shri Bhagwan Ovacha. You know, Lord Shri Krishna is called Bhagwan because he possesses 6 bhagas or divine traits. You know, the meaning of the term Bhagwan is explained by Parashar Muni, the father of Ved Vyas. He was the father of Ved Vyas. So he has mentioned in Vishnu Puran. What he says is, Aishwaryas Samagrasya Dharmasya Yash Sarirasya Gyan Vairagya Yogasya Ev Shashanam Bhaga Itiranam. He says the Supreme Personality possesses all these 6 Kalyan Gunas or the 6 divine qualities. And what are those 6 qualities? The first is Gyan. Gyan means knowledge, wisdom of all that is, total. Second is Vairagya. Vairagya means complete dispassion. Third is Virya. Virya is the capacity to create, to sustain, and to resolve. And then Yashas. Yash, you all know, Yash means fame, absolute fame. And Shri is all the wealth. All the wealth of the universe is Shri. And Aishwarya means overlordship. So, to have all knowledge or Gyan is to be free from ignorance. No, you have Gyan on one side and the other side is ignorance. So thus, the one who has all the Gyan, he does not require a mind. Mind it. The one who has got all the Gyan, he does not require a mind. This is, if we require a mind, to know, that means there is always ignorance. When you have all Jnana, it does not need a mind. Therefore, whoever is endowed with a mind, in order to know, he cannot be Bhagwan. So that means we all, whoever we have a mind, we have ignorance also. So we cannot be Bhagwan. Secondly, the one who has got absolute dispassion or vairagya, he has no longing. It also means he has no insecurity. He or she is Purna, full, Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purna. He is full. There is no insecurity. Everything is within him. There is no longing. Nothing is outside of him. That is Bhagwan. And Virya is absolute power. That is Shakti. It is the capacity to create, to sustain, and to resolve. The one who has this absolute power is called the Almighty. And then Yash. Yashas means all the fame, that is. And Shri is wealth. The Lord has got all the wealth. all the resources of this universe, any wealth that you actually it may be belonging to you in this life, but in fact it belongs to Bhagwan. It belongs to the Lord. You are only a trustee of that wealth in this life. Think of that. You are not the owner of that wealth. This is the way we should look at it. And finally, the one who is not caused, who is not ruled by anyone. He is himself the supreme ruler, who is not subject to the laws of someone else, has the bhaga called Aishwarya. He has got the overlordship of everything that is there in the universe. So these 6 absolute virtues, they constitute bhaga. And the one who has all these 6 virtues is called Bhagavan. So Bhagavan Shri Krishna says, my dear Arjun, Kutastva, from where? From where have you? Kashmalam idam. Kashmalam means delusion. This delusion, idam. Idam means this. So where from have you got this delusion? In this hour of peril, in this critical hour, because now both the armies are facing each other, and this is a very critical moment. And in this hour, critical moment, from where have you get this delusion? This delusion is not befitting an honorable person. An honorable person. It does not lead you to the higher abodes, that is heaven. No, the word he has used as Aryan. Lord Shri Krishna has used the word Aryan. So Aryan here does not mean to an ethnic group, or any kind of a race. See, Manu Smriti defines an Aryan as a very highly evolved and a cultured person. So Aryan here means a model human being, what a human being should look like, kind of a perfect gentleman. So, the sole purpose of all spirituality is to inspire the humans to become Aryans in all respects, which means we should become our best versions. Then we can become Aryans. So, Bhagwan Shri Krishna, he finds that Arjun's present condition is in conflict with the ideal condition of how an ideal person should be. Arjun is not in that condition now. Arjun, who you all know, Arjun is considered very a manly person. And he suddenly sinks down into unmanliness at the moment of crisis. This is a moment of crisis. So Lord Shri Krishna is reprimanding him of getting diverted from his path. Therefore, he is terming it as un-Aryan, un-Arya. So the Bhagavad Gita, effectively begins from here, because Bhagwan Shri Krishna has started speaking from this verse. Just look deeply at the process. Look at the process. How Lord Shri Krishna is. He is first inducing a hunger for knowledge in Arjun. The first thing he does is to point out to Arjun that his state of delusion or his confusion is dishonorable, is not honorable, is not appropriate. It is inappropriate for a virtuous person, for a model person. So he uses the term anarya, that is, which is unlike an Aryan, which is unlike a model human being. So this makes Arjun aware that his mental condition is not one that an evolved human being should have or an Aryan must have. Now, if you want to know what are the qualities of an Aryan and what should be the character of an Aryan, you need to dive deeper into the meaning that Bhagwan Shri Krishna is trying to convey. Now, you imagine this scenario of the battlefield of Kurukshetra is that now Arjun, he has just seen that he has to fight against his own brothers, even though they are cousin brothers. Kauravas are his cousin brothers. And who is the enemy? The enemy is no one else but his own brothers, his own guru, Dronacharya, and his most beloved, Bhishma Pitama. He has to fight against him. So he is so dejected. He's so dejected and despondent at the thought of having to fight and to kill his own kith and kin. So the mental condition of Arjun is one of delusion. Now it is now that Bhagwan Shri Krishna is telling Arjun, oh Arjun, my dear Arjun, why are you overcome by dejection? Kutastva. These relatives, your brothers, your relatives, what you consider as relatives, they are your fierce enemies. And they have only one purpose, to destroy your soul's peace. And if you are feeling pity, for them, for these enemies, that is un-Aryan. That is not befitting a noble person. This is not befitting a noble saint. Now, understand, the real message of Lord Krishna is not only for Arjun, but for each one of us. Lord Krishna is actually telling each one of us through Arjun that in real life also, our senses, our 5 karmendriya and 5 jnanendriya, all our 10 senses, they establish themselves as our friends, as our relatives. They make us believe that they are our true friends, our indriyas. But just like, enemies, they can pose as friends and gain entry into our house. In the same way, our material desires, which are the greatest enemies of man, they can, reside harmlessly, within this consciousness, within our consciousness. So, what Lord Shri Krishna is in fact indicating that these senses, they appear friendly to us because they promise us a very temporary and an intoxicating pleasure, a pleasure in flesh. But in the end, invariably they bring misery and pain and suffering in life. So they are the real enemies. Lord Shri Krishna is the guru of all gurus. The first effort of a guru, a true guru, is to strike at the root of devotees' ignorance. That is what he is doing now. That's why Lord Shri Krishna warns Arjun not to sorrow over those enemies who pose as friends, who pose as relatives, but they are our actual real enemies, like our senses. So instead of feeling pity for them, the devotee should subdue such enemy, such inordinate desires of our senses, our material desires. So to sympathize with evil is, ultimately to hand over, to surrender ourselves to our whole throne of consciousness to them. So it is this inability to discriminate who is a friend and who is an enemy. In real sense, when we are unable to discriminate, then we are un-Aryan. So this is what Lord Shri Krishna is saying. This attribute is un-Aryan. You are not able to discriminate who is your true enemy, who is your true friend, who is your true relative. Now, the second thing that Lord Shri Krishna is reminding Arjun are the consequences of delusion, that if you are in the delusion, what will be the consequences? He says, aswargyam, which means something which does not lead to higher abodes. You know, Swarg. Swarg is a heaven. It's a heavenly abode. But aswarga. Aswarg means opposite to Swarg, which is hell, Narak. So you all know how much pains and sufferings a soul undergoes when he is put in the hell. No? Man's life is a paradox. He is a soul actually. A man, we are a soul actually. But we are made in the image of the spirit, which can be satisfied only with divine pleasures. But when we incarnate into this life, when we get into this body, we are familiar only with the sensory experiences. That is why a man, when he is placed between the material and the spiritual, he must use his endowment. He must use his discrimination to distinguish between what is the real soul pleasure and what are the illusory pleasures of senses. You know, Lord Shri Krishna says, if you want to know the joy of heavenly consciousness, Swargam, vibrating in every cell of that ether, then you do away with the sense attachment. Then you make those senses as your enemies and overcome your enemies. They are not your friends. You know, heaven in this shloka, what is heaven? It consists of, limitless spheres of divine consciousness. Every soul that is imprisoned by the senses, he is an omnipresent child of heaven, serving out a jail sentence, out of bodily existence. So when we are on this earth, when the soul comes on this earth, he is in a way serving a jail sentence. हम लोग तो एक कैदी हैं. When the soul identifies itself with the spirit, with that one consciousness, aham brahmasmi, tat tvamasi, then our soul experiences itself with that joy of limitless space, of that one consciousness, of that infinite. But when the soul has ego, then it limits itself. It limits within a particular body, that I am this body, I am me, I, me, mine. So then we are very pitiably, chained. We are constrained in that cell. So the soul identified with the body, then it loses its consciousness. It loses its, consciousness of omnipresence, that it is that part of that one consciousness which is omnipresent. And that soul identifies itself with the body and then leads to misfortunes of pains and sufferings of life. So if somebody loves that bodily prison, then how can he attract the experience of living in the joy of God? Now Lord Shri Krishna also uses the word akirti karam. He says aswargayam akirti karam. Kirti. Kirti means fame and glory. But akirti means something disgraceful, shame. So akirti karam is one which is very disgraceful, which is leading to pain, leading to infamy, leading to failure in life, leading to degradation of the soul. Now, can you see how Lord Shri Krishna is making Arjun uncomfortable about his current state? Remember what we talked in the beginning? Until and unless you start feeling uncomfortable about your current state, you will never start growing. Now, this is what Lord Shri Krishna is trying to make Arjun uncomfortable in his current state. Let's see the kind of words that Lord Shri Krishna is using. These are not the words of kindness. They are not the words of sympathy or support. He doesn't say, oh, Arjun, you are very sad. Oh, no problem. I'm with. No. He is using tough words, tough, provocative words, which are meaning to shake Arjun. He wants to stir up Arjun out of his deluded state, out of his delusion. So instead of comforting Arjun, now this is how a profound, he is a guru of gurus. See how he touches. Instead of comforting Arjun, Lord Shri Krishna is making him aware that his mental state is not appropriate. By using three words, he has used anarye. The second word he has used aswargyam. And third is akirtikaram. Now, do you realize what is that propels us to find a meaning in our life? What is that which motivates us to make our lives better? It is that initial feeling of discomfort, of discontentment, of a knowing that our current state is not appropriate. You are not feeling it appropriate. You want to make it better. It is this knowledge, when it is properly channeled, then it can become a very, very powerful impetus and inspiration for us to become Aryan, to become the best version of ourselves. Therefore, God sometimes deliberately, he puts a person into turmoil, into these situations of life where he undergoes pain and turmoil, so that he or she may be forced to search for knowledge to remove the confusion. Those, who keep blaming God, who keep blaming for God for their own turmoils, for their pain and for their suffering, they continue to sink deeper and deeper into more pain and suffering in life. It is only those who are able to realize that their turmoil is a result of their own delusion, that their turmoil is a way shown by God to start moving towards true knowledge and to make their life better, to make themselves a better version of themselves. The message of Lord Shri Krishna is very clear, that the goal of life or our success cannot be attained by the weak. If you are under delusion, you cannot achieve success. To be firm in the body, mind, to be firm in the character is born out of our strength. This world and the next world are for the strong. Strength brings forth, our right conduct, our straightforwardness, leading to enjoyment of this world and reaching Godhood. All these divine traits, they have their source in the strength. Strength is life. Weakness is death. So we shall now continue on our next shloka in the next week. So till that time, Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.